Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this MIALA Annual Conference virtual breakout session. I'm your session moderator, Ida Martinez. I have a few housekeeping items to share with you. We ask that you keep your microphone on mute until you need to ask a question. You can ask your questions at any time by entering them into the chat panel, and we'll be saving all questions until the end of the presentation. After the session, please take a moment to provide feedback to our presenters by filling out the session's evaluation form located in the conference portal. Today's presentation is Insisting on Integrity, Evaluating Instructional Software Through an IDEA Lens. And your presenters are Maya Hopscheid, Mary Ruge, Patrick Roth, and Hazel McClure.
Thanks so much, Ida. Welcome, everyone. It's so good to see so many lovely faces and names here. And at the very last session of the conference, we hope you had a good conference. We're happy you're joining us. I'm Hazel McClure. Today, I'm joined by my three colleagues, Patrick Roth, Maya Hopscheid, and Mary Ruge, who are our panelists. They'll be talking about decisions and the challenge of decisions and the necessity of insisting on integrity in our decision making. The scenarios that they'll be sharing with us all have a few things in common. They're all about software, they all affect users, and they all involve elements of software that didn't live up to the standards of Grand Valley when it comes to inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility, or IDEA. Especially as academic libraries have had to move more online and more instructional support online, the need to evaluate the software we choose for our users is more essential than ever. We need to be paying particular attention to how the software affects a variety of user experiences. Our learning community entrusts us with these decisions, and we have responsibility to not just accept whatever is available when these tools are inadequate, not living up to our standards. In some cases, we may need to withhold support by not purchasing the product. In others, we may need to ask for change when these tools present skewed representations, inequitable or inaccessible experiences. And I think we have to talk about it, which is why we're having this panel today, so that we can share with you all and hear what your experiences have been too. So I'm excited to hear about the scenarios, and each of our panelists will be introducing themselves a little bit in their role at Grand Valley, and they will present a brief synopsis of the situation that they dealt with. We'll follow that with a few questions that I have for the panel, but then we'll also have plenty of time. We'll have 15 minutes for the audience to pose questions. You can feel free to be asking those questions in chat, and Ida will be taking notes for us, and we'll bring those back at that last 15 minutes. And then you can ask questions verbally also at the end. Maya is going to be kicking it off for us for today. Thanks, Maya.
Thank you, Hazel. Hi, everyone. I am Maya Hopscheid. I'm the Instructional Design Librarian at Grand Valley State University. And today I'm going to discuss an initiative that I've been part of for the last 2 years, the Virtual Knowledge Market, and how we identified and chose software that aligns with our values. But first, I'm going to start with some context. So in the spring of 2019, the Grand Valley State University Provost created the Virtual Knowledge Market Initiative. So this project would translate what was our already existing in-person peer consulting service to an online platform within a year. So the Knowledge Market is a flagship for GVSU. It provides a collaborative zone for students to come into contact with a variety of interdisciplinary peer consulting services in a way that reduces pressure, invites creativity, and provides friendly support alongside students from the very start of any assignment to near completion. And the offered services include digital skills, research, presentation, and writing. So it was the Provost's hope that we make the Knowledge Market services available to all students enrolled at GVSU. And this meant launching a virtual version. So in order to design an online synchronous and asynchronous version of the in-person Knowledge Market, the team was organized so as to elevate the needs of the existing program and to be mindful of GVSU's technological resources and the university's philosophical and pedagogical approach. So the team included the administrators of each peer learning service, which at the time included research, speech, and writing, and 3 specialists with expertise in universal design for learning, digital student experiences, and the university's e-learning and technology initiatives. So as an instructional design librarian, I was brought into the project specifically to provide support in aligning the virtual knowledge market to universal design for learning and accessibility best practices. So in regards to our synchronous online consulting service, we wanted this virtual space to be as intentional as our physical locations, so which have a sort of flexible open air design that promotes collaboration. And since this is really a key component to the mission of the knowledge market, we knew that the virtual service needed to make collaboration as accessible as possible. And we needed to find a UDL-aligned video and chat platform for synchronous consultations. But before deciding which platform we were going to use for consultations between the students and the peer consultants, we identified the essential qualities of our in-person consultations. And these included peer-to-peer connections, student-centered interactions, and fluid conversations. So in order for students to experience friendly and productive meetings, peer consultants needed to be able to empathize with their client and to encourage a student to stay in control of the consultation. So we knew that the meeting platform we chose needed to have video, audio, text-based chat, screen sharing, and document sharing capabilities, along with an automatic closed captioning feature. So all these tools were identified as essential for producing effective consultations for students and peer consultants. So all students at GVSU are issued access to the entire Google suite. So this includes Google Meet and Google Docs. And the Writing Center has been using Google Docs for years. And there was a lot of evidence to suggest that students were comfortable learning about and using the program. So we took this reality and investigated the other Google Suite applications. We found that Google Meet met all of our needs. So there was video, audio, and automatic closed captioning. Students can share their screens with consultants, and consultants can share links to resources or Google Docs via the chat. So both can communicate with each other in a variety of ways that might enhance understanding and empathy. And we instituted a UDL protocol for consultants that requires each session to begin with all features turned on so that students can pare down the features to meet their needs. And this contrasts with the option of picking a platform that offers fewer tools and thus forces students to request assistance when they need it. So we did experience some questions from higher administration about our choice to go with the Google Suite instead of a library-friendly platform. And we did use a LibApps product to design our asynchronous support service, the Resource Market. And our library was already using LibChat for service desk support. But in the end, the ways in which Google Meet and Google Docs met our underlying accessibility needs outweighed the benefits of going with a source that integrates with our other library products. It is free for our students, it is familiar, and it meets our accessibility standards. So when COVID swept our campus, many educators and organizations decided to use Zoom for their virtual replacement of in-person services. We considered switching, but we didn't like the clunkiness of switching between Zoom and Google Docs, which would be necessary for students bringing documents to sessions with the intention of editing or co-writing. And while Zoom is a tool that many folks can learn quickly, we like the familiarity of a Google product that might reduce barriers for technology-adverse users. Most importantly, Google's closed captioning is easier to use and to integrate in every consultation. And while Zoom now does have a closed captioning feature, this was not available to us when we made this decision. In our experiences, it has been a dependable feature, unlike our experiences with Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, where its closed captioning can be hard to find or unreliable. And in the end, we stuck with our initial pre-pandemic decision. Thank you.
All right, my turn. Hello, everybody. I'm Patrick Roth. I'm the head of Systems and Discovery. And I'm going to talk about an example that's a little bit older. So I did want to say that I'll be talking about a specific vendor product. And since then, they have resolved most of the issues that I'll be talking about. So no need to be concerned about said product if you use it. So Grand Valley has been a long time customer of many of the ProQuest products. In this particular case, I'll be talking about 360 Link. And so we have a pretty small systems team, and the goal of our team is always to focus on what the user needs, and we want to make sure that the user's journey through the library's website is as seamless as possible, and that often starts with accessibility, because when you make a website or a product accessible, it makes it better for all of our users. That that focus is often weighed against the amount of work it would take to make an interface accessible. Most of the time, the extra work to make something accessible outweighs almost everything else in our department. So we, and by me, I really mean our web services librarian, Matthew, so I'll take credit for some of his work. He customized 360 Link in 2011, I think, with a new interface and made it much more accessible. It really improved the usability, and the amount of work that it took him to do that was a significant outlay at the time, and then it also required annual maintenance. Anytime ProQuest were to change something, that needed to be updated. So with a small team and a limited resource, it was a difficult decision to make to do that, but it was the right decision for our users to make that choice, to make that interface accessible. When we made that decision to do that, we provided feedback to ProQuest and hoped that in the future they would modify 360 Link to meet our needs. So in 2011, in 2014, ProQuest released a new version of 360 Link called 360 Link 2.0. And it looked very similar to the design that we had created for 360 Link, our customized version of 360 Link. And it introduced a really great feature that our users grew to really love, which was index enhanced direct linking, which none of them knew what index enhanced direct linking was. But it meant that when you clicked on something, you didn't have to see the link resolver anymore. And that was a huge win. However, 360 Link 2.0 had a number of accessibility issues built in. So when we first saw the product in 2014, we were super, super excited about it. But after some investigation, we determined that we wouldn't be able to move to that interface. So 360 Link 2.0 had two implementation options, or two options really. Option one included the use of iframes, and those alone create accessibility issues. It looked really bad on mobile devices, and iframes introduced potential security issues as well. Option two, which was the option without iframes that looked pretty close to what we had implemented and customized with Link Resolver 360 Link 1.0, did not use iframes. And so we were like, oh, good, a solution that will work for us. However, no, it still did not work for us. There were significant accessibility issues with that as well. There was no semantic structure, there were no headers, there was, the product used tables, which caused problems. And really, you couldn't focus a screen reader on the citation information on the page, which is probably the second most important piece of information on the page, other than the link to get to the resource you're trying to get to. So for a user who relied on a screen reader to use the library, it was basically unusable. So, after some discussion, we weighed the cost of not having that index enhanced direct linking versus the cost of having an interface that wasn't accessible, and we decided to not move forward, because Matthew could have written scripts to make Link Resolver 2.0 more accessible, but again, that initial outlay of the work to rewrite all those scripts and the additional maintenance to go along with that just didn't outweigh the benefit of the new features. So next steps for us, we immediately provided feedback to ProQuest, let them know what issues we were seeing. They received our feedback. I would say no immediate action seemed to be taken. We started to share what we found with other libraries who also shared concerns and feedback with ProQuest. And over time, all these libraries sharing their thoughts and concerns, we started to see ProQuest make incremental changes to the product. And it took a while, but in June of 2018, we finally felt that 360 Link 2.0 had made enough progress accessibility-wise that the amount of work to customize it to meet our accessibility standards was acceptable, and we could move forward and implement 360 Link 2.0, which was a huge win because people really love that index enhanced strict linking. So I would say that this project is slightly unique in that we didn't have to move, right? Like oftentimes you are working with the vendor and you have, you have a platform and say you're on version 1 and they say version 2 is coming, you have 6 months to move to version 2. So in my head, I was like, well, what would we have done if we didn't have the option to stay? And I think really not much would have changed. We would have moved because we would have had to. But I think the feedback to the vendor is really important. And not just, hey, your product isn't accessible, can you please fix it? But we provided specific, actionable feedback. Like these are the things that are broken and you need to fix them. And then also sharing that information with other libraries. I think together we have a really loud voice and we can make a lot of change if we can work together. I think the other aspect that was important is we had an administration that was willing to let us make the decision on whether or not to move to the new version or not, even though for the majority of our users who may not need the accessibility features, the product would have been better. But the negative impact on the other users, and really all users, because accessible products are better for everybody, they understood that we should move them. So that's what I got.
Hi, great to be with everybody. My name is Mary Ruge. I'm currently an adult services librarian with Hackley Public Library, but at the time that I was dealing with some of the software here, I was an adjunct liaison librarian at Grand Valley State University. So when I came on about May of 2019, one of the tasks that I chose to take on was to sort of revamp some of the videos that we had available for students. And having gone to Grand Valley myself, have been a student, I'm a very visual person. So I thought these videos need to be more visual, less words, more pictures, let's do this. And so I remember one of the most engaging things for me watching a video is to have that hand that comes up and starts drawing things as the narrator's describing, because then I'm paying attention. I'm not like, oh, shiny things. So I was always, I retain things more. And so I'm like, I'm going to find a program that does this. And so I started doing a lot of research, looking at a lot of different companies. And I found My Simple Show, and it had a free trial time. And I thought, okay, I am not tech savvy. So I was like, you really have to bring it, because if you're not easy to use, I'm not gonna play with you. I'm not gonna recommend you. So I was very pleased by the easy layout. It was fun to figure things out and match things to script. So I brought it to Hazel and Maya. I said, and they're like, oh, that's fun. Yeah, go ahead and do that. That looks great. And everybody was pretty excited about it. I was excited about it. So I was so happy to contact Patrick and say, let's buy this. This is going to be a good thing. It's not just for us, for me to use, the whole library. I think we'll really enjoy using it. So they went ahead and bought it. And I had noticed when I was researching, it said use different hand, different hands can come in. And I thought, oh, I didn't really look into that. So I just thought, okay, great. Because all they had in the free version was this white hand coming in and drawing everything. So I thought, okay, I buy it, different hands will be available, cool. But when we bought it, I found out quickly that different hands just meant like female or male. They're all white. And one part of me was like, just keep going. Everybody loves this. You're an adjunct. Don't promise them something and not deliver. But the other part of me knows that I have to be responsible to my students that I teach. And I knew that I could not put a product out there that did not represent my students. So I did fight a little bit, and I you know, there are some people, some colleagues outside of Grand Valley that I had shared this conundrum with, and it was kind of 50-50. Some of them like, well, it's a small thing. They'll probably change it in the future. It's not a big deal. But I said, I'm going to contact them. So I contacted My Simple Show, and they told me that they were going to, this was, I believe, summer of 2019. They said they were going to change it by August. And I said, that's like a month away, but okay, you already bought it. We got the promise. Let's do this. August came around, no changes. I reach out again. Hi, per your last email, that was a you promised that you would have these different skin tones. Where are we on this? And he said, oh yeah, that's been pushed back to October. No reason given. So I said, well, you know, I was promised this in August. I cannot use your program. I can't put out any of these videos until we get this taken care of. And I didn't think they really took me seriously, because there was like, oh yeah, October, we'll get it. Don't worry about it. But September came and I was nervous. And so I wrote them again, and they pushed it back again. And I said, okay, well, unfortunately, this is where the actual written idea came, you know, when sorry. So, but we were at Grand Valley, they were very adamant about making sure that we have inclusivity and diversity and inclusion. And so I found that written, and I actually printed it up, and I actually repeated it word for word on the phone. This is what Grand Valley believes in. And I know this may not seem like a big deal to you, but this goes directly against our initiatives. I cannot do this. So I was really nervous to tell Maya. I was really nervous to tell Patrick, hi, that thing, where we can't have it anymore. But I got nothing but support. And I think that really, really helps me to really, really push back again. When they contacted me and said, whoa, you don't have to, we're going to do it. But they refused to give me a date. So I said, you don't give me a date. I said, we're going to cancel. When you make the update, we'll go ahead and think about signing up again, you know, because in the meantime, they were giving me all these little weird fixes. So I said, if I can't have different skin, can I have no hand come in? And they said, well, yeah, if you tilt every image you put up just a few degrees, the hand won't come up. And so I said, okay, I had to get these videos out. So I went through every frame and tilted all the words, all the pictures, which probably drove some people crazy when they're like, I think that's a little off. But I had to do it, and I didn't want to keep doing that. And that's why, with the encouragement and the support of the people that work with me, I was able to really put my foot down, and we canceled with My Simple Show. And he contacted me as soon as they made that update, and we bought My Simple Show again. So, again, to some people, it might not seem like a big deal, but when you're an example and you're responsible for teaching a wonderful array of students, it was like a no-brainer, you know. So that's my experience.
Thank you so much. I know these scenarios, and listening to them again, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so thoughtful and measured, and it's kind of inspiring. So thank you, all three of you. I do have a few questions. So I loved hearing about the communication that had to happen, you know, like you had to talk to the administration, or you had to talk back to the vendor and tell them what you needed or give them feedback. And Patrick, your advice about what kind of feedback to give, like very specific, actionable feedback, I think is really a great example. And Mary, when you mentioned like reading policy to say, this is what we stand for, these are our values, I think that that's also another example of specific feedback. Do you all have other advice for negotiating with vendors? Or maybe I'll throw out there too, or working with administration. So if administration doesn't see kind of your vision, how do we go about doing that?
I think I'm going to go with the negotiating with vendors piece. And I think that kind of depends on where you are right in the process. So in many cases, you're able to evaluate the product before you've paid for it, either through a trial or whatnot. And that's when you can say, we've looked at it, it doesn't meet these standards. We aren't going to move forward with this until it meets it, or we're going to need you to provide a date by which that will be fixed if we move forward. And if not, a way out of that contract or a significant price break or something, right? I would say for Grand Valley, we generally done that beforehand, and it's just been we're not going to purchase this product until it's fixed, because the other ones make things more difficult. That assumes that you have staff who have the time to evaluate products and the knowledge on what to do, which is not always the case. So sometimes you might have to seek outside expertise. So maybe you could have like your disability support office help you evaluate products or things like that.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with either vendors or with administration. Because a lot of the times there is commodity and power. And sometimes we're not placed in positions of ultimate power, what they see. When I was looking for software, a lot of the times the question would be, do you do the purchasing? And I'd have to say, okay, that power, it doesn't lie with me, but it kind of does, because I'm going to tell the person who purchased it to purchase it or not. And the same thing with library administration. And I've worked at other libraries, not GVSU, but I was kind of low on the totem pole. So trying to fight for or advocate, I should say, for patrons was a lot harder. And so it comes to the point where if they don't see your power, they don't think that you need to be listened to as urgently. But as long as you have that conviction, that's where your power lies. You have to know what you're fighting for, why you're fighting for it. And it doesn't matter who you're talking to, you're going to bring that conviction, and that's going to show that, hey, I have the power in this. The power is behind me. This is my community that's behind me. And, when even if it's administration, and if you think you don't have that power, I always just say, keep emailing them. And my goal is to never leave a meeting without something tangible coming from it. It doesn't have to be a promise. It has to be an option. It has to be we're going to a later meeting date. It has to be something that I can walk out of, or else I'm not going to walk out of that room. Or I'm going to keep emailing you and saying, hey, this conversation we had yesterday, where is it lying? Hey, that conversation we had 2 days ago, what's happening with it? So even if you don't think that if you don't think you have too much power, you really do. Just trust in yourself, and trust in the voice, and trust in who you're fighting for and for your cause.
I would second Mary with conviction. Conviction is very important, because I think it's easy to feel swayed, even if that's not the intention. I think I was really fortunate that I work with administration that shares my values. And so I think I don't never really get too much pushback, but I think it's really easy to, when someone says, oh, have you tried this? Have you considered this? What about this instead? To be like, oh, I guess maybe yes. And especially like during something like COVID, when everything's shifting and everything feels uncertain, it's really easy to start questioning things. And I think just remembering that what's best for your service, what's best for your students, whatever it might be, and kind of sticking with that and letting that sort of guide you and give you that confidence to move forward and stand your ground.
Hazel, this is Ida. It's 11:45. This was your question and answer time, just reminding you.
Thank you so much, Ida. It's perfect timing. Maya wrapped up as the clock ticked to 11:45. So maybe I've missed them, but I haven't seen questions in chat. But if folks have questions, feel free to, maybe we raise hands just so we can establish an order if multiple people have questions. And while people are thinking of questions, I do have a list, so I can jump in if I don't see any hands.
I was going to ask if there were any products you reviewed that you outright eliminated from consideration, if you know of any, and for what reasons?
I'll jump in here. There's been a number of smaller databases. I can't remember their names, but there was a music database that we looked at, and there were a couple other ones. And when we would ask accessibility information or for documentation, they would say, "Oh, we don't have that. We don't do that." And we're like, "Okay, well then we can't buy your product." They're like, "Well, no one's ever complained before." We're like, "Well, there's always the first person." And so it seems like in the system side, it seems now it's mostly smaller vendors that we have to deal with. I'd say the big ones are at least trying their best to make accessible products.
So one question I have is, what did you experience internal struggles? Like, so we've talked a little bit about how you interacted with, administration or vendors, but was there an internal struggle to these kind of decisions?
Yes, 100%, absolutely. As I alluded to, I think especially because we started the virtual knowledge market the year before we shut down for COVID. And so everything that we had sort of designed and piloted was to be designed as one aspect of the knowledge market. We had the in-person component and then the virtual component. And then suddenly it was like, oh, get out of pilot, everything's going to be virtual now. And that was really stressful. And I think it wasn't what we had planned for. And we were fortunate that we had protocols and everything in place already, and we had this ready to go. But there was a lot of sort of doubt, I think, for me at least. I won't speak to everyone else on the team. They were probably more confident than me, but a lot of doubt about, oh, are we doing the right thing? Is this right? Should we consider like Zoom instead, since that's what everyone else seems to be wanting to use right now? Or maybe since everyone's moving to the LMS, maybe we should be moving more into Blackboard. There were all these kind of thoughts that started sort of kind of coming in, and started thinking about like what really is important. And I think that was really challenging for me. And I'm really grateful that I had a good team and good support from my supervisor, Hazel, and other administrators to kind of help say like, no, we've come to good decisions. We have this plan. Let's stick with what, I'll come back to Mary's conviction. I think like sticking to that conviction was good, but I think, yeah, that was big, because it felt like, oh, we did not plan for this.
Yeah, I again just want to say that being a new librarian to academic libraries, yeah, I was 100% like torn, because I really wanted to impress my new colleagues with this great new thing, and I didn't want to be perceived like I was wasting the library's money, but I also really wanted to do the right thing. And again, that's where, if you are somebody in the library who does have some power, you're a supervisor, always make sure that the people that work with you and below you feel empowered by you. Because I mean, the minute I showed Maya this problem, she was offended by it. She was like, why would they? Yeah, that's you made the right decision. Absolutely. And then that empowered me to make more decisions down the line that were idea centered and idea focused. So even if you do have that power, share that power, empower other people with it.
Man, I kind of wish Kara was here. Kara Cadena, our head of collections. I think that area probably has the most internal struggle between, especially like really specialized resources that come from these smaller vendors that might not have the accessibility features you want, but then also might be the sole source of the content that a faculty member is requesting. And she would probably be able to talk about those struggles a little bit better than I would. I would say what I have seen though is generally when the library presents like, hey, that's great content, no doubt about it. But did you know that people who rely on a screen reader can't use that at all? That many times stops people from pushing back because man, you're a real jerk if you're like, oh, I don't care about people with a screen reader, let's buy it anyway. So I think, you know, the word conviction has come up a lot. And I think administration, your library administration has I think ours especially has done a good job of getting everyone kind of focused on idea and realizing and knowing that it's an important aspect of all of our work. And that has empowered everyone to feel comfortable to push back on decisions that might not be idea focused and know that we'll get the support if we say no to someone and have good justifications as to why we can say no. Yeah.
So Maya, there's a question in chat, I think that you can handle. Someone is interested in Google Suite and how it works with virtual knowledge market consultations. Mariel Kelly wants to know what kind of feedback are you getting from students, especially students who might need audio and visual, such as screen readers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And both in pilot and in later assessments, we've gotten overall very positive feedback from students using the services. And I will say we have not looked specifically at students who use screen readers or students who might need other accommodations as much. We just have, it's been a general survey sent out to all students using the services, but I definitely see that as a potential area for future assessment, especially as we move to transition back to in-person in the fall, and we will go back to the original model of in-person and virtual services and seeing how that plays out. Do students still prefer having that virtual, having the technology and accommodations that can provide, or do students prefer to go back into in-person or a mix? And I think there'll be a lot of potential there to talk to students and see how we can provide additional support. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. And then Austin is asking, and I think this might be for the whole panel or Hazel, with the sheer amount of resources out there and balancing individual product desires, do you find it challenging to create a uniform experience for users, especially if faculty decide to pursue other products? Do you allow for outside products or encourage staff to utilize institutional licenses despite preferences? That's a lot. So the question is there in the chat if you want to refer to it. Can anyone field that? And then we'll take Tom, who has his hand up.
I'll chime in and then others can
Thanks,
join.
Patrick.
I would say, while we would really encourage everyone to use institutional licenses and like, especially for like collections and things like that, route things through the library, we only control the library budget. So other departments can spend their money however they want. And for example, the one music resource that I mentioned that you know didn't have a VPAT, and like when you asked about accessibility, they were like, yeah, I don't know, what is accessibility? We said we would purchase it, and I believe the music department went ahead and purchased it with their own funds and made it available through the department. So we can only control what we can control, and hope that departments understand the logic behind our decisions and not move forward with them.
Tom, can you unmute yourself? Ask your question.
Yes. In looking at specialized resources and software packages, did you run into the problem that some of them were designed for corporate customers and had a very different way of moving it, you know, like limited number of users, et cetera, and trying to encourage them to adapt it to something that would fit an academic institution?
That's a really good question. And I do see that with softwares where either it'll be really focused on corporate or there'll be the corporate package and then like they'll make the separate educational package that feels like it's the only difference is the cost, and it still really feels like they just sort of took the corporate package and adapted it to an educational model, or they might be more used to working with K through 12 instead of higher ed. So I do see that a lot, and I think Mary's scenario is a really good example of a way where I think it was originally designed for a corporate environment, and they were really surprised that anyone would have issues with the way it was designed. And so I think it's good to let them know that if they want to work with educational or higher ed institutions, there might be different values, there might be different needs. And I think the more they encounter those different kinds of institutions, that they're more likely to change. There's always going to be the strength in numbers. But I think, yeah, it's definitely gotten better at pushing back and realizing if something doesn't work for us, it's not us, it might be them. And then kind of asking those questions or asking for new features and new accommodations.
And you can tell who has dealt with educational institutions before, because they know what you're saying when you talk about ADA guidelines. A lot of the other products I was looking at were very much aimed towards marketing someone's product or doing some kind of employee training. And that was not the top of their list. And a lot of times I had to send links over email saying, oh, you don't know these laws? Oh, okay. And here's some guidelines and pushing these things through. And a lot of them just didn't know. And so I said, okay, well, we won't be working with you, but hopefully you decide to do something different in the future. So yeah, it's just, if someone doesn't meet your guidelines and your needs, let them know why and move on.
You got some applause.
Alex, do you have a question also as your hand?
Sorry, yes, I was actually trying to raise my
Alex.
hands,
Yeah,
not
see.
clap.
Okay, go ahead.
Although you all deserve applause. I know we only have like a few minutes left, but I'm wondering, so I feel like a lot of, apart from Mary's example, a lot of what you all have addressed really relates to ADA and accessibility related aspects. And I'm curious if you all have any more, red flags that you watch for, or aspects that you use when you look at programs that are more directly related to like the inclusion and diversity aspect. I think Mary's example was perfect and fantastic. I'm just curious if there are any more things like that that you look for or have encountered situations.
I can chime in with one. I'm going to Matthew again, another Matthew Reisman example. Summons Topic Explorer. He, in doing searching and stuff, he noticed a series of results that were returned in that panel that were problematic. And I don't have all the examples, but you'd search for women in the workplace, and the recommended topic would be stress in the workplace. And there's an implication there, right? There were other ones where you would search for, like a minority name, and it would come back with something totally inappropriate. And if anyone's interested in that, he has written up stuff on that. I could send it out or share it with somebody. So we do, I'd say we do evaluate our products, probably not as systematically as we'd like to, just because of time. But when we notice a problem, we definitely take action. And in that case, he let the vendor know. I think not much action was taken again. And so he kind of put him on blast, and then everyone started to notice. And I think he wrote a book about it. So it's kind of fixed now. So sometimes you just got to be the squeaky wheel to get things fixed when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Sorry, I know we're at time, but I'll just quickly add that something else that we did look at a lot for the virtual knowledge market was taking a trauma-informed approach to how we designed the service and how we identified software and the procedures we wanted to use. So yes, it was accessible. We wanted to make sure things were accessible, but we also wanted to make sure that students felt comfortable using the service, and it was really wanted to make sure it was available for all students. So we did try to design it in a, with an equitable eye in that way as well.
Thank you, presenters. Thank you, attendees. This is great. Please remember to fill out the evaluation form on the conference portal, and enjoy a warm, sunny Friday and have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, everyone. Bye.